Hi. Welcome back to my attic. I'm the grumpy old grognard. My friends call me Kenny. And, well, let's have a little chat about tabletop role-playing games. Well, gaming in general. Because the truth of the matter is, I have been away for a while. No, I'm not going to make a video every time WotC does something stupid. Because I don't want to make that many videos. So I have not made a video about sending the Pinkertons to someone's house. Because A, it didn't surprise me, right? Pinkertons are corporate thugs. Hasbro is a corporation. They needed some thugs. They hired the Pinkertons. I'm not sure, but I'm, say, 75% sure that it's still the case that the head of security for Wizards of the Coast, or is it Hasbro? One of them is a Pinkerton, is a former Pinkerton. So, yeah. And they had this whole OGL thing coming up where they were going to have to do a lot of bullying. You know, people aren't just going to give you their content, right? They were going to have to go take it. They were going to have to use cease and desists. They were going to have to basically bully other people out of the industry. That was their plan. Who's better to do that than the fake cops at Pinkerton, right? They show up and they have these fake badges. They carry guns. They threaten you with criminal charges. I mean, they're just, you know, perfect for enforcing things like the old OGL. Actually, the one they never adopted, the new OGL. Now, obviously, that didn't fly, but that's only because y'all were paying attention, right? So, you know, no shock, no anger, some disgust, but I'm not going to make a video about that. Didn't make a video about the firing everybody either. That shouldn't have surprised any of you. Come on, guys. Wizards of the Coast is gone. Not a company anymore. It's just a brand. Hasbro's running things. Hasbro's a toy company. Okay? So what they do is they get their shipments out to the stores for Christmas. And once the shipments are out, they fire everybody. That's what Hasbro does. Okay? Shouldn't have surprised any of you. Shouldn't have surprised any of you that they fired their game designers and their artists and the people who are working on Dungeons & Dragons. Because that's not what Dungeons & Dragons is going to be anymore. They've already told you. They might publish one more set of books, although it doesn't even look like they're going to get those out in time. My hunch is by the time they publish those books, they'll be hopelessly obsolete to the shitty app that they're making. So, no surprise. No surprise. They fired everybody right before Christmas because they didn't need them anymore. The shipment was out. The Christmas shipment was out. They're changing what they're doing. If they even bother to ever publish those books, they'll probably do it through somebody else. No, it's video game time. Dungeons & Dragons is going to be a video game, guys. It's not even going to be a good video game. It's going to be a shitty mobile app. Okay? That's where we're going. They've told us. Told us all of this. So these curveballs they keep throwing at us, they really, God, at some point, guys, it's got to stop surprising you. Okay? Now, the reason I'm making a video today is because it's not the WotC. I mean, it's got to do with the WotC, but it's not the WotC. There's this thing, and I forgot who made the video, and I'm not going to link to it below because it's stupid. But there's this, I think it was a tweet or something. The golden age of tabletop role-playing games is over. It's over. No, golden age of Dungeons & Dragons was over a long time ago. And what we've got now, I can't really explain to you what that is. It's kind of a pop culture corporatization of what used to be Dungeons & Dragons, but it was popularized by, well, Critical Role, right? Critical Role, who, by the way, would rather be playing Pathfinder. Okay? Let me lay that out to all y'all 5e devotees who think that Matt Mercer shits rose-colored pudding, okay? He was the Critical Role campaign before it became a TV show was a Pathfinder campaign, okay? Pathfinder was their preferred role-playing game, and now, of course, they've made their own Pathfinder, their own role-playing game. So the fact that these guys were playing Dungeons and Dragons really had a lot more to do with getting a sponsorship from Wizards of the Coast, maybe some materials, some help along the way, because it's expensive to make a TV show, and it worked, right? It worked. They hooked themselves into the brand. They became synonymous with the brand. They made a lot of money. Good on you guys. Good job. But let's not pretend that they were playing Dungeons & Dragons because that's the game they wanted to play. They were playing Dungeons & Dragons because they are tabletop role players. Their previous system was Pathfinder, but they figured, let's make some cash and switch to D&D. No problem there. I have no problem with that. Oh, and Stranger Things. I love the fact that all these people started playing Dungeons & Dragons because they saw it on Stranger Things, and they said, I remember that. Back in high school, I do remember that. I wonder, I'm going to give that a try. And they ran out and they bought 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And now they think they play the same games as their heroes on Stranger Things, but the simple fact is that game you're playing, that 5th edition game, has exactly zero to do with the game that those kids are playing on TV. That was a completely different game. Okay? So, Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons, borrowed time. No doubt about it. The golden age of Dungeons & Dragons, in my opinion, it died a long time ago, but if it didn't, if you think 5e it really is Dungeons & Dragons, then it's on its deathbed now, too. Because Dungeons & Dragons is about to turn into this. Exactly what your average Dungeons & Dragons player doesn't want. A table full of people staring at their mobile phones is exactly what Wizards of the Coast is about to deliver. So here's the deal. This does not herald the end of the golden age of tabletop role-playing games. It gives it a chance to start. Okay? This isn't the end of the golden age of TTRPGs. It's the end of the golden age of Dungeons & Dragons. Arguably, like I said, I would say it died after 3rd edition. But, fine. Benefit of the doubt, just for the sake of argument, 5th edition is Dungeons & Dragons, and this is the end of the golden age. I submit to you, the golden age for TTRPGs cannot continue to exist with a single monolithic game controlling them. Oh, but Ken, I love this bit. Don't you know that a rising tide lifts all boats? Yeah, D&D guys, 5e got people out there. D&D is not the tide. It's just another boat. And it's got a lot of fucking people on it. It's like overloaded how many people are sitting on that boat. It's leaky. It's listing at like 12 degrees. It's going to roll over on y'all any minute. Okay? The tide rises and falls regardless of what the people on the boat want. Look. What you don't see here, because they're up on the top shelf, but what you don't see here is any Dungeons & Dragons. But you do see Merc, Rollmaster, Star Wars, Star Trek. You see a number of versions of Battletech, Boot Hill, Gamma World. I mean, there's a whole bunch of games on here that are not Dungeons & Dragons. And that is where the golden age of tabletop role-playing is going to come from, not from Dungeons & Dragons, okay? Dungeons & Dragons has been the mammoth preventing all of these other games from getting any traction, okay? Except for this one actually outsold Dungeons & Dragons for a while. But how shall we put it? Let's just hypothetically, let's just go to Gen Con, okay? You go to Gen Con and you run a little poll, right? And you ask people, what do you consider your hobbies? And you go down a checklist. And one of those checklists is TTRPGs. And you go back and you start asking people who have said yes to that question, do you consider TTRPGs to be your hobby? I bet less than half of them have ever played anything other than 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Okay? They're all that you're not a tabletop role player if the only game you play is Dungeons & Dragons. Okay? Your hobby is not TTRPGs, your hobby is Dungeons & Dragons. Okay? Same for wargamers, by the way. You run the same poll and you ask them, do you consider wargaming to be a hobby of yours? And they'll say, oh yes, I'm a wargamer. What games have you played? Oh, I've played Warhammer. And that's it. Never played Squad Leader. Never played Harpoon. Never played Risk. Just Warhammer. Okay, you're not a wargamer. Okay, you play Warhammer. That's your hobby. Nothing wrong with that. That's your hobby. But you're not a wargamer. And you guys playing Dungeons and Dragons and nothing but Dungeons and Dragons, you're not TTRPG players. You're D&D players. Okay. And I'm not saying you can't. If you play D&D, you're not a real role player. But if you play nothing but, then you're not a tabletop role-playing game is not what you're doing. Okay, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so the death of Dungeons and Dragons in its current iteration, in my opinion, is the healthiest thing that could possibly happen to this industry, because it can't grow in the presence of the 800-pound gorilla in the room is not letting anyone else play any other games, right? They're not interested in science fiction role-playing games. They don't want to play Doctor Who. They don't want to play Traveler. They don't want to play Call of Cthulhu. They don't want to play any of these newfangled games that are coming out. And there's a whole bunch of them, and some of them are actually pretty good. Okay, so the golden age of tabletop role-playing games hasn't even happened yet. And as long as Wizards of the Coast has this ridiculous monopoly on even the phrase TTRPG, because like you go to YouTube, you type in TTRPG, you're going to get Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeons & Dragons, and a lot of more Dungeons & Dragons. You're not going to see Traveler, you're not going to see Call of Cthulhu, you're going to see just shit tons of Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, YouTube recently did a video on their Dungeons & Dragons, on their TTRPG channel or whatever. Oh, did you notice that the TTRPG channel on YouTube is actually called Dungeons & Dragons? Dungeons & Dragons does nothing except suck all the air out of the room. Okay? But with the death of Dungeons & Dragons, with the dearth of Dungeons & Dragons, with it becoming a shitty mobile app, which it's going to be, my words, I haven't been wrong yet, right? If it's going to give, a lot of the 5e players are just going to keep playing 5e, God bless them. Have fun. But maybe, just maybe, some of those people might start looking around into the larger hobby. A lot of you are going to be upset by this. Gatekeep them. I'm not upset by this. I don't care what kind of blue-haired liberal you are. If you don't mind playing Dungeons & Dragons with my ancient gun-toting ass, then I'm fine with it. You can come sit at my table. Just be a, decent adult human being who is able to understand that other people are allowed to have other points of view, and everyone will get along famously. We'll be fine, okay? I don't care how liberal you think you are. My bet is that I'm a mile to the left of you, but most of my players are way over on the right. So, and we get along fine, okay? By any global standard, I'd be considered a hardcore centrist, right? I think a certain mix of capitalism and socialism is necessary to keep an economy running in a healthy way. In the United States, that makes me a raging fucking tanky. But in the rest of the world, if you like step across the border into Canada or Mexico, then suddenly that becomes centrist. Not that Americans have any idea what left and right even is. It's just ridiculous. Oh, the left are anti-gun. Did you know that? The left, they know better. Than they know the people don't need those evil, scary-looking black rifles. Karl Marx was pro-2A. I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm just going to tell it to your face. Go cry about it, okay? The ultimate lefty was all talking about how the workers can never allow themselves to be disarmed. They can't let anyone take away their ammunition, even to the extent of killing other people, even to the extent of using force to keep their weapons. So tell me all about left and right, America, because you don't know shit, okay? Now, don't want to get too political, because that's how I got kicked off Twitter, okay? But I will say that if we can overcome that difference, right, then I don't see how I can, I just don't see how blue hair is going to be all that distracting, right? Just don't see it. If you don't mind playing in my world, you're welcome to sit at my table. If you don't want to play in my world, you don't have to. There's plenty of other worlds where you can sit. Okay, so that's going to be my message to my audience, us old farts. Okay, us conservative, cranky old deplorables who can quote Marx. Well, I can't actually quote Marx, but I do know more about him than 95% of the people who claim to be Marxists. But we are about to go on a new ride, okay? And this is going to be the ride where these guys start to get some traction, okay? Hey, you know what would be cool? A science fiction adventure. Can we do a science fiction adventure next? Or how about some gothic horror? How about a Western? How about a spy novel? Right? People are going to start to think outside that Dungeons and Dragons box once the Dungeons and Dragons is gone. So my opinion on this is that the golden age of role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, it hasn't even started yet. Okay? And the death of Dungeons and Dragons is not even a wrinkle along the way. In fact, as long as Dungeons and Dragons is there, I don't see anyone else being able to get any. Dungeons and Dragons is too big. It sucks all the air out of the room. It's too much. The golden age of Dungeons and Dragons is over. The golden age of tabletop role-playing games might just be about to begin. Anyway, I'm the grumpy old Grodnard. That was my video.